Hello and welcome to NewsClick. In what seems to be a pattern, yet another political deadlock was broken recently in Nepal with the resignation of Prime Minister Dr. Baburam Bhattarai and the appointment of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Khilraj Regmi, as the new Prime Minister of the country. An agreement signed between the four main political parties called for fresh elections to a new Constituent Assembly to be held by June 21st, and the CA, as you would remember, was dissolved last year after no consensus on the most important issue of state restructuring in Nepal. We have with us two eminent commentators and political observers from Nepal. We have Prashant Jha, who works with The Hindu and who has been assiduously commenting upon the political developments in Nepal. We have Shyam Shrestha, eminent civil society activist who participated in Jan Andolans and also former editor of the Nepali magazine Mulyankan. Welcome to NewsClick. Prashant, caretaker Prime Minister and that too serving Chief Justice, constitutional issues apart, this seems to be some kind of a happy compromise. Do you agree?
Well, I'll say that it's an unhappy compromise. It is a compromise, and that I guess that the happy news is that the political deadlock is broken and that all parties have agreed on a future political roadmap, which they were not able to do for the last 10 months. But all sides are left dissatisfied,
right,
because the Maoists had claimed that since Baburam Bhattarai was the last legitimately elected Prime Minister on the floor of the House,
right,
and since he had announced elections, the elections should be conducted under him,
right,
and that the government that he was leading could be converted into a national unity government.
right.
The opposition, Nepali Congress and UML, insisted that the government should be handed over to the opposition.
Right.
And so the NC was claiming leadership. The NC President Sushil Koirala thought he was the rightful claimant to the Prime Minister and his
right.
government should hold elections.
Mm.
So what has happened is something that no side had bargained for or wanted.
Right.
But because each side rejected the candidature of the other side, this is what they landed up with. So everybody is a bit unhappy, but at least the political deadlock is broken,
Right.
and the hope is that this will take things forward,
Right.
and bring about some kind of political solution. Constitutionally, we can talk about the constitutional issues.
Right, right. Shreestha, how do you judge the people's mood? I mean, which political party comes across well in this, after all this deadlock and finally an agreement coming out now?
People have been quite impatient with all the political deadlocks between these, 2 or 3 years or the last 10 months. They were very much frustrated also at the behavior of the political parties. And they want this instability end soon in Nepal. And for ending this instability, there was no other choice than next election.
Right, right.
So people were very much unhappy,
Right,
frustrated also,
right, and
little hope,
right,
very little hope on political party.
right,
They were. It was as in before 2006.
right, right.
Their frustration has come to that level, but for getting new CA election was the only way out.
Right.
They could go for the re-establishment of the Constituent Assembly also, but
Right, right.
political parties did not like that choice.
Right, right, right.
Therefore, this decision hasn't been liked by the people.
Right, right. Prashant, you have been covering the last government led by Dr. Baburam Bhattarai. How do you rate that government? I mean, what do you think were its achievements and what do you think were the misgivings that you associate with that government?
I would say that the government did have a mixed record. If you were to look at the achievements, we must remember where that government was coming from. Between 2009 and 2011, there was this period where the Maoists were out of the political power structure.
Right.
They were on the streets. There was no progress on constitutional issues. The issue of integration of the Maoist combatants who were living in cantonments across the country had been unresolved. Within the Maoists, there was this tension over whether to take forward a revolt line or whether to take forward the peace and democracy line. The previous government, the Mother Nepal government, had not delivered. Neither had the government that immediately preceded Baburam Bhattarai, which was the Jhalanath government. So it was in this mood of darkness and despondency that Baburam Bhattarai took over on August 28, 2011. And I think the first achievement was that the Maoists, as the biggest party of the CA, were rightfully back to leading the power structure,
Right.
as I think the mandate of the 2008 election showed.
Right.
So And soon after that, the achievement that we saw was on November 1, 2011, there was a peace deal finally. And the agreement held that a maximum of 6,500 combatants could be integrated, the rest would be rehabilitated. And today the peace process has, this aspect of the peace process has come to its logical conclusion. There are no cantonments anymore. The Maoist PLA, People's Liberation Army, no longer exists. 1,500 of those combatants have got integrated into the Nepal army, and day before's agreement held that one person would get colonel rank and two would be lieutenant colonels. The rest have got fairly generous compensation packages, which range from 5 to 7 lakhs Nepali. So that's a big achievement, and that we should not forget. I think the second achievement was the fact that this government was formed on the basis of a pact between Maoists and Madhesis. And this gave birth to a federal alliance in Nepal. And I think that the Maoists and Madhesis and later ethnic groups who came on, who did not join the government but they formed a broad alliance, the fact that such an alliance was born put the issue of state restructuring decisively on the national platform. Having said that, on governance, the record of this government was pretty poor. While the Prime Minister himself tried to take certain initiatives, tried to push certain projects, he tried to expand the infrastructure in Kathmandu and so on. There are reports, and none of this is proven yet, but there are reports, and there is a widespread perception that this was a very corrupt government, and that the Prime Minister did not exercise his authority to crack down on corruption. The other is this political culture. When the Maoists came into the political system, the hope was that they would break this patronage-based, corruption-induced political culture, but they seem to have become as much a part of it. They have contributed as much to the crony capitalism, and so what is the new economic vision that the party brought forward? And there I think there is a gap. Just a final note that I would say about this government is that, in my opinion, the government tried hard to save the CA. The government in the third week of May brought in a proposal to extend the term of the CA by another 3 months, which I think was a wise move. And I think if the CA had got extended, a constitution may have probably come, because the peace process had got over, and if there was more time to calm down the passions on federalism, perhaps a reasonable compromise would have emerged. But it was the opposition which opposed the extension, and then the Supreme Court said no extension is allowed. And then the government tried to preserve the agenda and announced elections. So I will not blame. Some people in Nepal blame the government for the dissolution of the CA. I don't think the government was responsible for the CA dissolution, and they in fact preserved the agenda by calling for elections to a new Constituent Assembly. So I think it's a mixed record.
So, as Prashant points out, there has been some kind of a realignment in Nepali politics with the formation of this federal alliance between the Maoists and Madhesis. But at the same time, this split within the Maoists and the creation of another Maoist party, how do you think would affect the elections? What role, or rather what area of the political spectrum would these Maoists occupy? The splinter group of the Maoists would occupy. And how do you think would affect the electoral prospects of the Maoists, the mainstream Maoist party?
This another Maoist party had come out of their original Maoist party on the reason that the former had got degenerated politically, culturally, and ideologically also. And they had come out that peace process was finished in a very bad manner, and their point was that CA dissolution was also because of the unwise decision of the government. These were 3 reasons they were telling to the people that they had come out because of that. But after coming out, they could not establish their own agenda at all. They were following the agenda of Nepali Congress and making alignment with the Nepali Congress to oust the duly elected government. Actually, Nepal's political scenario is very much amazing. Parliamentary political parties, who are standing for parliamentarism, they are not for duly elected government. And Maoist party, who has said that they are for revolution, they stand for that. So after coming out, at the time of coming out, it was speculated that they hold some 30% of the song of the party. But nowadays, their popularity is decreasing. Their hold on the cadres is decreasing. Many of them have joined the former Maoist party,
Right.
and I think that will not affect a lot in the election.
Right.
You know, they are in mood of boycotting the election.
Right. Right.
One of the reasons is that they will show very poorly
Right.
in the election.
Right. Right.
And next is that, you know, they have no separate agenda,
Right.
no different or progressive agenda
Right.
than that of
The
the former
mainstream.
Maoist party.
Right.
So, a kind of identity crisis
Right. Right.
they are facing.
Right.
How to show
Right.
difference.
Right. Right.
People, their cadres are asking the leaders that why have we come out from the
Right.
from that party?
What is their position on the state restructuring issue?
You know, on that issue, their thinking and you know the bigger ones thinking is almost same.
Okay.
You know, they are for federal line on the question of identity-based politics, and the Maoist party led by Prashant Jha also was the same. But blaming is that you know they have left that agenda.
Right.
But this is for showing them different only.
Right.
Actually, there is no difference on federal agenda, I think.
Right. Right. Prashant, so would you say that this CA elections that is due, I mean, perhaps it will be delayed, and you were talking about some constitutional issues, you can talk about them as well. But do you think it is going to be some kind of a referendum on the state restructuring issue?
I think that will, you know, there will be many other issues which will end up being debated.
Right.
The opposition, the Nepali Congress and the UML will, of course, you know, go back to the electorate and say you tried the Maoists out and look, they are the same, or you know, and they will try to tap into the disillusionment that a significant section now has with the Maoists also.
Right.
But I think the key issue will be federalism, as
Right.
you indicate,
Right.
and it will be whether Nepal should whether Nepal should have a federal system or not,
Right.
and if it has to have a federal system,
Right.
then what is the kind of federal system
Right.
where even if they don't fight elections together,
Right.
the Maoists, Madhesis, and the ethnic groups
Right.
will be batting for an identity-based federal system, while the other parties will talk about a different kind of state restructuring, which gives priority to resources and which gives priority to geographic
Right. Right.
regions.
Shrestha, how would you rate the performance of the previous CA? The CA was elected with a lot of expectations and hopes, but for the state restructuring issue, I think there was a general broad consensus of various other issues. The kind of government that would be formed, the promulgation of an universal employment, and various progressive set of agenda were already discussed in the CA. You think those things will be retained, but differences will be there on the state restriction? How do you think this is going to get played out?
The performance of the last CA, if we judge from the thematic committee reports that
Right.
they had, it was far progressive report in comparison to all the constitution in the South Asia and Asia.
Right. Right.
Whole Asia, if you compare the whole Asia,
Right.
Asia's constitution, that draft was more progressive on the question of right to job, right to education, right to health, right to accommodation, even right of social security and right to social justice. You know, all the Dalits will get access to the political structure in relation to their population, and 3% more in the federal level, 5% more on the provincial level. And even the ethnic communities will be represented on the proportional level. Women 50-50. Women will have more right than in India, than in any Southeast countries or Asian countries, even in comparison to Scandinavian countries. And many provisions were there in terms of progressive elements for very backward communities, backward area also. If that constitution would have come to effect the total structure of Nepal would have changed.
Right.
But what happened in Nepal that CA as such should have been very powerful, but that could not be powerful. Some 12 leaders, a dozen of leaders confiscated all the rights of the CA, and they tried to, decide everything themselves. They could decide something very important, very key issues, but things should have been gone to CA. But they did not go inside CA, and all the powers had been hijacked, and CA became like rubber stamp. On the day, on the last day also, CA had been called. The meeting of CA had been called. The leaders did not enter into the CA meeting. Otherwise, CA could not have dissolved. CA could decide about itself, and it could have been saved.
Prashant, so this agreement actually makes us believe that things are on the right track. But vis-a-vis Nepal, there's always a slip between the cup and the lip, So you are talking about some constitutional issues that might actually, hinder the process of, restoring the CA through elections. What are they? And
no, I don't think that constitutional issues will hinder the elections of the CA. But now, there are many challenges that remain. The first is, there is this criticism about the Chief Justice leading the executive branch of the government. And I think the criticism is valid if you look at it.
Separation of powers.
The separation of powers point of view. The way that has been addressed is that as long as the Chief Justice is the head of the executive, he will have nothing to do with the court. The second in command has already taken charge in the judiciary as the acting CJ. But there is opposition by some parties, including the radical Maoist faction, and there is some dissent in both the Nepali Congress and the UML to this idea of a CJ-led government. That dissent, let's see how that plays out. The other is that the immediate challenge is to form this government. There are only 2 ministers right now. There are 8 more who have to be appointed. All political parties will recommend their names. All these things take more longer than one anticipates. The Election Commission does not have any commissioner. All of them retired. So these constitutional positions have to be filled. The basics of election preparation, from printing of ballot papers to the more political issue of updating the voter roll and using the 2008 voter roll as a basis and providing citizenship to those who's there are people who are citizens but their children don't have citizenship because of some draconian laws. That has been corrected in the past agreement, but updating citizenship rolls, these aspects are still left. And while the Election Commission said that it needs 90 days and you still have 100 days to June 21, the most political leaders that I have spoken to privately in the last 2 days tell me that a more realistic timeline is November. So then the process gets pushed. Now the hope is that in November they will do the election. The question is, how effective will a CJ-led government be when politicians, will the politicians provide this government all the support, because there will be a political mechanism? Will vested interests who don't want elections, will they come up, will they try to stir up trouble and try to derail it? The fear is that, look, this is a technocratic regime, and will a technocratic regime headed by the CJ collude with, end up developing ambitions of its own? Will it end up having the backing of, say, the president, and will the political parties get bypassed? And that danger must be, and if the elections are not held in November, then we are in a complete crisis, because then, December the Chief Justice is supposed, there is no provision in the agreement for what happens if elections are not held in December. So, and then the Chief Justice retires as well, and he is the Prime Minister because he is the Chief Justice. So once he retires as Chief Justice, then what happens? And So, the point that I'm trying to make is that the interim constitution did not envisage this situation. It did not envisage the failure of the CA. It did not envisage a head of a judiciary taking over as the head of the executive. All of this is happening on the basis of a political agreement. And the spirit of that political agreement and the motivation for that political agreement is have elections as soon as possible and try to restore certain legitimacy to the situation. That's the big challenge now, and one hopes that the CJ-led government is able to.
The takeaway is that there is a sense of ad hocism that is going on in Nepal as of now, but there is a popular will that is actually asking for the completion of the stalled CA process, and one hopes elections will actually bring them to an end. Thank you so much for your analysis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.